My name is Elena Morales. I'm from Tucson, Arizona, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person sitting here, telling strangers how my life split into before and after. She looked me in the eyes and said, "It was just a mistake." I've replayed those words so many times in my head that I can tell you the exact way her voice cracked on the word just, how her lip trembled, like she was the one who deserved sympathy. I can still see the way she didn't blink, as if holding my gaze would make it more believable. But here's the thing, you don't accidentally destroy a relationship. You don't just wake up one day and erase years of trust with one choice, unless you knew what you were doing. And that night, I realized I had been living beside someone I didn't fully know. Let me take you back to where this all started. I met Sarah at a friend's engagement party in Phoenix. It was one of those warm desert evenings where the air feels heavy with the smell of orange blossoms, and every conversation is half laughter, half people shouting over the music. I was sitting near the edge of the pool, drink in hand, when she sat down next to me. She made some joke about how engagement parties were just wedding trailers, little sneak previews of the drama to come, and I remember laughing, but also thinking, who is this person who says what everyone else is too polite to say? We didn't start dating right away. It took months of random messages, running into each other at the same coffee shop, sharing the same table when the place was full. She'd ask about my day, my projects, my dog. I'd ask about her work, her family, and in those small exchanges, I felt this connection. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't trying to impress me. She was just there. And when someone is there, consistently, it's easy to let them into your life. For a while, it was easy. Too easy. We took weekend trips. We shared playlists. She started learning how I took my coffee. I learned she couldn't stand the sound of ticking clocks. She said it made her feel like time was chasing her. I thought that was poetic. I didn't see it as a warning. But here's what I've learned. In hindsight, the warning signs aren't always loud. They're small, quiet, almost invisible. That was the first thread I pulled. I didn't know then how far it would unravel. Over the next few weeks, I noticed changes. The way she'd turn her phone face down when I walked into the room. The sudden, vague explanations for where she'd been. How her smiles didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. I told myself she was stressed, tired, overworked. I didn't want to believe that the person I'd let so far into my life could be lying. But the distance grew. And with every unanswered question, every late night, every conversation that ended with, "You're imagining things," I felt something I'd never felt before. This constant low hum in my chest that told me I was losing her. And then came the night of the confession. She stood in our kitchen, barefoot, arms crossed like she was the one under attack. I asked her if there was someone else. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked at me, steady, unblinking, and said, "It was just a mistake." As if those 4 words could undo the late-night messages. As if they could explain the phone calls that ended the moment I walked in. As if they could erase the fact that she had been building a life somewhere else, with someone else, while I was still thinking we were planning ours together. I've told this story to friends, to family, and now I'm telling it to you. Because the thing about betrayal is, it's never about that one mistake. It's about every little choice that led to it. And if you've been here before, you know, Unfaithful Chronicles doesn't sugarcoat anything. These are real stories, real people, real consequences. If you're new here, subscribe, because this is only the beginning. You're going to want to see how it ends. My name is Elena Morales, and if you had met me 3 years ago, you would have said I of the lucky ones. I'd just started dating Sophia. Sophia wasn't loud or dramatic, or the kind of person who needed a spotlight to feel alive. She had this way of making every space warmer just by walking into it. She was sweet in a way that didn't feel forced, remembering the names of baristas, texting my mom to ask how her garden was doing, sending me links to songs because the lyrics reminded her of something I'd said months before. When we first met, she was wearing this faded blue hoodie with the drawstring pulled tight, a paper cup of coffee balanced in one hand. She smiled at me like she already knew me, and I swear, something in my chest shifted. That night, after we'd talked for hours, she hugged me goodbye, and I remember thinking, this is the safest I've ever felt with someone I barely know. The first year together was a blur of small, perfect moments. Road trips to places neither of us had been, driving until the desert gave way to mountains, stopping at gas stations to buy snacks we didn't need. We had a running joke about who could find the worst roadside diner, and I still have the photo of her pretending to gag at a plate of gray scrambled eggs in a town so small it didn't have a stoplight. We built rituals: Friday night takeout from the Thai place down the street, Sunday morning coffee in bed, long walks where we'd talk about everything and nothing, our childhood dreams, the cities we wanted to visit, what our future house might look like. Trust came easy with Sophia. I never questioned where she was or who she was with, because she'd always been an open book. Daniel was part of our circle from the start, my best friend since college, charming in that easy, effortless way. He could walk into a room of strangers and walk out with 3 new friends and a dinner invitation. He liked Sophia right away, and she liked him. We'd all hang out, movie nights, hiking trips, lazy afternoons at the park. Daniel made her laugh in a way that was different from me, and I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? We were all close, and for a long time, everything felt solid. But I believe now that the first cracks in a relationship aren't earthquakes. They're hairline fractures you can't see until it... Once, she came back later than she'd said she would. I asked how it went. She said she was tired, didn't want to talk about it. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were somewhere else. I told myself it was nothing. Everyone gets tired. Everyone has off days. But those small moments added up, like little notes in a song I didn't recognize yet. I told myself these were just normal relationship bumps. But I was wrong. It was somewhere in the second year that things shifted. At first, it was so small I almost didn't notice. She was on her phone more. Not in an obvious, hiding in the bathroom kind of way. Just always there, in her hand, her thumb moving in quick, deliberate motions. She'd glance down, smile. Not a big laugh, not even a grin. Just that private, almost secret smile you give when something hits you in a place only you can feel. I told myself she was just chatting with her sister, or watching something funny. Sophia had always been a little techie. She loved sending memes and little voice notes to friends. But after a while, I realized I was no longer the person she was sharing those little laughs with. Then, the cancellations started. We had a standing date night every Thursday. It didn't matter if it was dinner out or just cheap pizza on the couch. It was ours. One Thursday, she called an hour before, said she was swamped with work and would have to stay late. I believed her. The next week, she canceled again. This time it was that she wasn't feeling well. Then another week. Then another. I started to get this tightness in my chest, this quiet discomfort I couldn't name yet. One night, I woke up around midnight. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow coming from the living room. I could hear her voice, low, soft, but with that unmistakable lift of a laugh at the end of her sentences. I stayed still for a minute, just listening. I'd never heard her laugh like that alone at night. The next morning, I asked her about it. She shrugged, said she couldn't sleep and was just catching up with a friend. When I asked who, she narrowed her eyes at me and said, "You're being paranoid. It's nothing." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. Around that time, Daniel started showing up more. Not in a way that screamed, "Pay attention," but in the kind of way that, looking back, makes my stomach turn. He'd drop by with coffee for both of us. He'd text her about upcoming plans before telling me. He'd make little inside jokes with her, ones I didn't get anymore. At the time, I thought it was just them getting closer as friends. I mean, why would I suspect my best friend? Why would I ever... When I opened that message, I stared at it for a long time before I even clicked. My thumb hovered over the screen like it was going to burn me. It was a photo. Sophia and Daniel, at a bar I recognized, one we'd all been to together. She was sitting close to him, too close, her body angled toward his in that way people do when the rest of the room disappears. And their hands, God, their hands were together on the table, her fingers curled around his. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. My mind tried to grab at any explanation, any version of the story where this wasn't what it looked like. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe she'd had a bad night and he was comforting her. Maybe it was just timing, the angle, a trick of the camera. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself it was just one picture. But the seed that had been planted weeks before had grown into something else entirely, and it was spreading through every thought I had. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I decided I needed to know. A week later, she told me she was going to the gym after work. She didn't invite me along, didn't mention taking a class or meeting a friend. Just a quick workout, she said, and then she'd be home. I waited 10 minutes after she left before I grabbed my keys. The gym was in the opposite direction of where she drove. I followed at a distance, my hands sweating against the steering wheel, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. She pulled into the parking lot of a small coffee shop, one that stayed open late, the kind of place where you could disappear into a corner and no one would notice. I parked far enough away that she wouldn't see me, but close enough to watch. And then I saw him, Daniel. Walking toward her like this was the most natural thing in the world. She smiled when she saw him, not the distracted, tired smile she'd been giving me lately, but the full, easy one I remembered from when we first started dating. They hugged, not a quick, friendly hug, a long, lingering one, the kind where you let go because you have to, not because you want to. When they sat down, they leaned in, shoulders almost touching, talking in that quiet, focused way where I think part of me had been bracing for that exact sentence, because when she said it, I didn't feel the explosion I expected. I felt this deep, hollow ache, like someone had quietly stolen something I didn't even know was missing until it was gone. And just like that, those words became the center of everything, the conflict, the betrayal, the truth I couldn't unhear. When she said, "It was just a mistake, it didn't mean anything," I didn't speak for a long time. The words hung in the air like smoke, filling every corner of the room, stinging my eyes, making it hard to breathe. Finally, I asked her, "Was that the first time you were alone with him?" She hesitated, not for a second or two, but long enough for me to know the answer before she said it. "No." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it landed like a weight in my chest. I leaned forward. "How many times?" She shook her head, eyes darting to the floor. "I don't know. A few. We've talked before, gotten coffee. Nothing happened at first." I didn't miss the way she said "at first." I pressed. "So what changed?" Her shoulders slumped. "We crossed a line," she said, the words quiet but sharp enough to cut through whatever denial I had left. "It wasn't planned. It just happened. It just happened. Like tripping over a crack in the sidewalk, like catching a cold. As if choices aren't choices when you don't want to admit you made them." I stared at her, searching for something. Remorse, fear, anything I could hold on to. And then I asked the question I already dreaded the answer to. "Do you have feelings for him?" The pause that followed felt endless. She opened her mouth once, closed it, looked away. Finally, she said, "I don't know." 3 words. Not a denial, not a promise, just uncertainty, which, in that moment, hurt worse than the truth. I went numb. I don't remember if I responded. I just remember the sound of my phone buzzing on the table. I glanced down. It was Daniel. The message was short. "I'm sorry. It just happened. I never meant for this to hurt you." I stared at those words, my pulse roaring in my ears. I could almost hear his voice, that same familiar tone he'd used 1,000 times when he'd call to check in, when he'd show up at my door with takeout, when we'd laugh about nothing until 2 in the morning. And now here it was, the clean slice of betrayal, delivered without even the courtesy of eye contact. The thing no one tells you about betrayal is that it rarely comes from strangers. After that night, after the confessions and the half-answers and the pauses that told me more than the words ever could, I knew I couldn't stay. She begged. She said we could fix it. She said it didn't have to end this way. She cried, the kind of crying that leaves your whole body trembling, her voice breaking as she reached for me across the table. But I didn't move, because I had already seen the way she looked at him. I had already heard her hesitate when I asked if she had feelings for him. I had already read the message from Daniel, the man who had been my closest friend, reducing the wreckage of my life to 3 words. It just happened. You can't unsee those things. You can't unknow them. So I told her the only thing I could. I'm walking away. I don't remember how she reacted after that. Maybe she yelled. Maybe she went silent. All I remember is the sound of the chair scraping against the floor as I stood up and walked out. The days after were a blur. I blocked her number. I blocked Daniel's. I stopped going to the places where I knew they might be, even if it meant cutting myself off from mutual friends. I avoided the cafe where we'd had our first date, the park where we used to walk on Sundays, the Thai place that knew our order by heart. Because everywhere I went, there were ghosts, not of strangers, but of us. People like to say mistakes happen, but mistakes don't happen repeatedly. Mistakes don't require secrecy and careful timing and quiet places where you think no one will find you. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. A choice made over and over again, knowing exactly what it would cost. And love is trust. And once that trust is broken, it's never the same. You can try to patch it, to stitch the pieces together, but it will always have that fracture running through it, the one you can see every time you look closely enough. I thought walking away would be the end of it, that I could close the door and leave the mess behind me. I thought the worst was over. But then, one rainy night, weeks later, there was a knock at my door, and when I opened it, she was standing there.